All right. Hi, Phil. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a bit strange being on the other side of the desk. On the other side of the interview desk.
Yeah, I realized as well that you were first booked to come on in December last year.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. To everyone who's listening, I am useless, and I kept cancelling and rearranging. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm here. I'm here now.
Yes, you can all listen to the wisdom that Phil has. But we'll start back at the beginning, because that's where I always go with my guests. So I'd love to hear about like your upbringing, like what was your family situation like? What were your school years like? Did you have any kind of like health problems back then, or anything major that you went through, or kind of how do you feel about your childhood?
I think this is one of those things, because when you go down like the chronic health route, you're like, eventually when you've like you've had so many, you've seen so many doctors, and you've then gone down the alternative route. Then they're like, okay, let's look at your childhood. And I'm always just like, my childhood was fine. Like there was nothing wrong. I had, my parents were still together. Had brother and sister. I had okay school. I had friends. So everything was fine. But then when I do kind of look back on it in hindsight, like I guess from a health perspective, I always had like, there was always something like with allergies. I was always really allergic to stuff. I always had like eczema. I always had stuff like that. I always had issues with my sleep. I was always, really just very like an allergic-y kind of kid. And when I look back on, I still kind of wrestle with this now, whether it's actual real trauma, because I'm not actually like pissed off about it now or anything like that, but I had quite like a bullying older brother that kind of put me in my place quite regularly, 7 years older than me. And when I've spoken to people, they say that looking at it from a 5-year-old's point of view, having someone he essentially was like a father figure to me, and my dad was like off working and stuff, so kind of he was there kind of being my father figure, but he would wasn't very nice to me, beat down on me, etc. So I had stuff like that, but I think overall I'd say that I was pretty lucky, and I still am really lucky. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I don't think if someone says they've had a perfect childhood, I think they're probably lying. So yeah, that's kind of it in a summary.
Yeah, nice. And then so when did your health challenges kind of kick in, or did you have, because a lot of people I speak to, and myself included, had a period of like basically working really hard and having like an intense job or something, and maybe partying a lot, or basically pushing their body a lot, and then that's when they started to notice symptoms. So was it similar for you?
Yeah, so actually something I thought about that looking back on it, which is probably kind of put me in this position, is that I've always been like a very extreme person. If I do something, it's always at the extreme, or I don't do it. And so I kind of lived that way. And I started drinking, being from the UK, I started drinking alcohol from a very young age, and was always, partying a lot, and, hitting that lifestyle very hard. And I think I was always the kind of person that I focused on health as looking good and not feeling good. And so when I went to university, I was, going out 5-6 times a week, drinking half bottles of vodka before I was going out, eating
like the cheapest vodka you can find.
Yeah, exactly, in a plastic bottle. And I always said to myself, and I said it at the time, I said my body must be so confused, because I used to go to the gym all the time. I played for the university football team, so I'd be playing football 4 times a week. I'd be going out getting I was really hungover, and then I would play football, or I'd go on a big run. And so I was really pushing my body to the extremes. And at the end of university, I went traveling for a year and went to some amazing places. And when I was in Australia, I got this, one day I just realized I got this tick bite, and didn't know what it was at the time, but my lymph nodes around my groin swelled up. And I just started to get these like weird symptoms, like neurological symptoms, tingling and stuff like that. And I went to the doctor in Australia, and he kind of just gave me some antibiotics and kind of brushed me off, and told me to go away, and said that I was fine. And so kind of and as those next few months in Australia went on, things just started to get weirder and weirder with my symptoms. It was quite scary. And so you start to freak out a little bit. And I think, looking back on it now, that made things worse, I think, because then you're there in this heightened fight or flight mode. And then getting back to the UK, I went to see a neurologist because I still had all this stuff going on, and I was getting all this like pins and needles at my neck, and all this like muscle weakness and all this weird stuff. So I started to freak out quite a lot, and went to see a neurologist, went to see a number of doctors, and they just said, look, you're fine, it will all go, it will work itself out. And I was like, yeah, right, no, you're saying this isn't real, it is real. But then actually by the end of that year, so this was like 22 at the time, 23, by the end of that year, it pretty much all subsided on a day-to-day basis. So I was just like, cool, this is all good. But it just so happened at that time I got back to the UK, and I hadn't ever had a proper full-time job before, because I'd been in university. I was trying to avoid being an adult for as long as possible. And I moved to London. So one of the most healing places in the world, London, where all I was focused on was going out, partying, playing football at the weekend and going to the gym. But then I'd added this new thing to the equation, which was working 12 hours a day and trying to earn as much money as I could. Because, as well as I do, being in university, so poor, you've got no money. So me and all my friends, very competitive, just trying to earn as much money as possible. And so I think now, looking back on it, when I was 22, I'd been given a sign from the universe, or my body was just trying to give me a sign to say, you're not doing, this whole life thing, you're not doing it right. You need to do it differently. And not only did I not listen to it, I think I just added more stuff to the equation. And when I look back, and I've never been a great sleeper, but I was just living off next to no sleep throughout my 20s. Really, I would work 12-hour days, and then I'd go out on maybe a Thursday, have like 3 or 4 hours sleep, go in on a Friday, do the same thing all weekend. I'd get to Monday morning and say, I can't keep doing this. And then I just do it again the next weekend. But even in the week, when you think I'd be so tired that I'd be sleeping, I wasn't aware of sleep hygiene. So I was like, watching TV till really late at night on my phone. Then I'd take ages to go to sleep. So I was just really chronically sleep deprived and eating terribly. No, I wasn't saying I was eating terribly, but I was eating to make myself look good, but not feel good. And sorry, I've just been talking solidly for it goes on. So I'll just stop there if you wanted to ask anything.
That's okay. It's your story. But I was going to ask, what did you do for work at that time? What were you doing? Was it hard work?
Yeah, so I was working in recruitment.
Oh God.
I was going to say the response that everyone has is, and you literally had the worst response that you can have. Yeah,
my sister used to work in recruitment, so.
well, it's a job that you get when you don't know what to do, so you get it because they promise you money, and I think some people just leave after a year, and other people like me, I stayed in it till I was about 30. So luckily, it was a good company to work for. They were actually a really good company to work for. That being said, it is relentless. It is, if I remember, if you were leaving at 6 o'clock, people would be, going, half day was it? And, that kind of thing. And it was, I don't know when you started, in an office or whatever, but it was very much in the time where you could get away with treating people like shit, and like HR these days would have an absolute field day with the kind of stuff that used to happen, particularly with girls that worked in the office. I mean, God, if you were a girl that worked in our office, it was just not a nice place to be. But anyway, sorry, you asked me that question. That was a very long answer. I worked in recruitment.
So did you know that you got Lyme disease at this point from the tick?
No. And I think I got tested at some point in my 20s, because what happened throughout my 20s was that I would just every now and then, about after every 3 or 4 months, I'd get weird symptoms come up, and then they would go. And I was increasingly getting a bad back and a bad neck, and I just thought that was because of getting older and sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't get, because the testing in the UK is so bad and because there's no real good practitioners, I didn't get any sort of diagnosis.
Yeah, I guess that's an issue, isn't it? I was going to say that earlier. Like, obviously, in like America and Australia and places like that, Lyme happens a lot more frequently. So they're probably just better educated with it. And I know, because I know plenty of people with Lyme disease in the chronic illness community that have had a really bad experience with medical professionals and the treatment they get, and that they don't get it taken seriously. I mean, even if they are in America, but I bet in the UK, I bet there's hardly any Lyme literate doctors.
Well, not even. So I think I got tested for it 3 times via the NHS. But I remember 2 times, because I told the story about how it happened in Australia. And Australia is even worse.
Oh,
they
really?
actually they deny that it exists in Australia. So basically what I got told was someone would Google it and they'd say, oh, it doesn't exist in Australia. Where it's a load of bullshit. It does exist.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's why actually, and I'll go on to talk about it, but I still to this day haven't had a positive test for Lyme. I had to have a clinical diagnosis of Lyme based on my symptoms, my blood work, and the tick bite, because I actually had someone on my podcast that was it's just some other kind of, it would be a variant of that, but it's in Australia, but it's right. It mimics the same kind of symptoms.
And that must have made you feel like crap, basically, just having it denied when you know that there's a problem, and like people are it's just gaslighting, really, isn't it? And it just makes you feel like you almost sometimes want the diagnosis just to have the validation of like, there is something wrong with me. Like, I'm not just pathetic and I can't cope with life.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, the thing is, I guess the thing that made it worse in my 20s, I would go and see a doctor whenever I got these symptoms, but then they would go away. So I was kind of, I couldn't really deny, because it wasn't, really impacting me on a day-to-day basis. I couldn't really deny what they were saying. So I was just like, they must be right. Like they're the doctor. My parents have raised me. They love doctors. They're our local GP. He is God. Mm-hmm. They take any medication he gives them. And so I just believe them. But it was only when, and I guess going into the next part of the story, like I was on a holiday in Croatia with some friends when I was 28, so 6 years after it happened, and not treating myself very well again, and not getting a lot of sleep and whatnot. And I just started to develop every symptom under the sun. And leading up to that holiday, I'd had like various different flare-ups, and then they would go away, but they were becoming more frequent. And leading up to that holiday, I was also pushing myself to get in the best condition I could, because I wanted to look good, being on holiday, partying in the sun, but also I remember I was partying a lot as well, I was working so hard. And I actually remember being after work once, and I went for a client, and I think we had 5 pints, and I went home and I went for like a 9-mile run or something after doing that, because I was so desperate to be in good shape. And I think by the time I just went on this holiday, I was just my body was just had given up. So yeah, every symptom under the sun you can think of, I just started to develop. And so yeah, by the end of that was kind of the beginning of the next chapter, where this was kind of like a 24/7 thing.
So what did you then do about it? What were your kind of first steps to try and improve the situation?
Well, so again, because I was like in the school of thinking of Western medicine, I immediately freaked out and thought it was something like MS or something like that, because it was a lot of the stuff I had was neurological, and I had a lot of joint pain, but I knew that, and a lot of muscle weakness, and so I didn't necessarily think it was definitely MS, but I thought it was going to be something like that, because I think Lyme disease had already been ruled out as far as I was concerned, because I wasn't aware that it was that there could be more testing. So yeah, when I got back, I went and had like every scan you can think of, every test you can think of, and I remember the neurologist basically just saying it was anxiety, and that it would essentially making me feel like I was a bit of an idiot, and then just over the course of that year, I was just so at a loss. I didn't tell anyone what was going on. I didn't even tell my parents. I started seeing who is now my girlfriend, and I wasn't saying anything to her. In fact, it took a year before I said anything to her, because you couldn't really explain it. I was like, I've got something going on. People tell me there's nothing wrong with me. So it kind of makes it sound like mental. And so, yeah, basically, to cut that part of the story short, I got to the point where I'd been referred to so many different people through the NHS, and they ultimately referred me to someone like a psychiatrist, essentially, who said it was health anxiety, and was giving me antidepressants, and put me on antidepressants like for a number of months. And then I finally kind of told my mum what was going on, and she was just like, that's insane. You're not, yeah, okay, you might have anxiety like the next person, but you're not depressed. And also she said, is this helping you? And I was like, no, it's not. And she was like, well, look, just stop taking it and just think about it like logically. It started with this tick bite, look into that. And so then I started to actually look into the fact that Lyme disease, as we talked about, isn't really well tested in the UK. It's certainly not well treated. And so I then went and got a load of tests done in Germany, and it came back where essentially I didn't get a positive test for Lyme, but I don't know, for anyone who's done tests with Armin Labs, they test your thing called CD57 and CD3, which is like your natural killer cells. And it just showed that my immune system was just completely shot, basically. And then I had different parasites, heavy metals, what's the other thing? Heavy metals, and just a load of these kind of like active herpes viruses. So, all these things that could be causing loads of issues. So I was like, this is amazing. This is great. Someone's confirmed validation, like finally. And then, but it didn't really work out like that. That was in 2016. And I was told I needed to go to Germany and I would get intravenous antibiotics and that would solve everything. And it didn't. So I'll stop a bit then, because there's a lot more to the story, but I'll stop because I'll keep on talking otherwise.
It's crazy that is the solution, like that is the solution that's presented to so many problems. And I think I needed intravenous antibiotics because I had sepsis and I would have died. But I know that was a huge part of why I got ill, because my gut was just destroyed. And then from then on, like there's so many knock-on effects of that. So like if you already had all these problems and then you got a load of antibiotics straight in the vein, like it's going to cause more problems.
Yeah. And to be honest, I didn't really have I think I've been quite lucky. I've never really had I've definitely got stomach issues, but I've never been, I've met a lot of people, with Lyme and stuff in these clinics, and they've had like horrendous stomachs from antibiotics. And so I think I was quite lucky, the fact that I stopped doing those after a couple of months. And I think at that point I was like, I need to start looking at other, more alternative things. And that's when I started to look at, like, for the first time in my life, I started to look at the mind-body connection and meditation and stuff like that. And so I started to go down more of like, supplements and all that kind of stuff, different diets. And although that didn't, although none of the things like shift, move the needle for me necessarily at that time, definitely got my mind thinking in a different way, and definitely got me thinking, I need to stop going to the doctors, because I kept going to the doctors and I'd be at the doctors, and not only was it not helpful, it was really demoralizing. And every single time you'd come away from it and you'd just be like, those fucking, sorry if I'm swearing, but those fucking idiots, and they're not all idiots, sorry, some of them are really understanding, but it's just a system, it's a systemic problem. And I just said to myself, I'm not getting anything from going to the actual normal doctors. I'm going to do this more on my own. So from that point onwards, I don't really think I've been to like a normal doctor who hasn't got this kind of knowledge since then. And so that sent me down a whole different another route.
Yeah, I think, and I do the same now, where I only do it if it's to get a standard blood test that I know they'll give me, and and I'm not going to have a big conversation with them about like the why. And if they try and give me advice, I just blank it out now. But I think it depends what stage you're at and how much about your condition and holistic medicine, like at the start, it definitely used to make me feel that I would come away crying or angry, or I'd tell Joe what they'd said to me and he would be so appalled by the way they'd spoken to me. And it does put you back, because like you said, it makes you feel like you can't trust yourself, or maybe you like your intuition's wrong, or maybe you are exaggerating, and then that almost like stops you in your tracks with your healing. So I think there's definitely a place for taking a step back from anything that's not positively progressing your healing, and like looking at other options and just being open-minded. And I think that being open-minded part and taking the power back is such a key part of being able to start healing. So it's great that you, like, what made you kind of start looking at the mind body stuff? Was there a trigger for that, or was it just like desperation of like, I'm just Googling everything right now?
Yeah, it's running out of options, to be honest. I'm like, well, not anymore, but I was like the least that way inclined. Like some of the stuff I do now and some of the stuff I've tried since, you would never put me as that kind of person back then. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, you'll do anything to get your health in order, right? And I still think for a long time, even after that time, I was still waiting for someone else to come along and solve the problem for me. And I wasn't really, and I'm still very much seeing myself as a victim of all of this, and why is this happening to me? This is going to go on forever, and I can't, I'm not going to be able to. I start, you have these really dark thoughts. I'm not going to be able to have kids. I'm going to get worse and worse, and all these kinds of things. And you just start to build this. You have a pity party for yourself like every day, because and I think because I'm typical man, I'm kind of like dealing with it on my own as well, and just really bottling it up. I didn't really get the chance to give myself the opportunity to kind of like share that with other people and vent. So yeah, I think although it was a good step in the right, it was another years before I really started to actually like take ownership of it and stop seeing myself as a victim, and actually start trying to like actually enjoy my life rather than just kind of wait for it to get started again.
Yeah. And so what were the next things you did that were more on the holistic side that kind of made a difference? Or like, because obviously now I know with anything chronic, like anyone who's listening to this understands that it's not like right, it's done now and I'm perfect and I'm healthy forever. But you kind of like get to a point where you are able to do these things again. You realize there's light at the end of the tunnel. You feel much more in control. You've got this kind of toolkit that keeps you feeling good. So it'd be great to hear like how you got from that point to like where you are now.
God, I mean, I have tried so many different things you would not believe. I went and did stem cell treatment in Germany. I did stem cell treatment in so expensive. So I got down a massive rabbit hole one day on Facebook and realized, that I thought that was my, the answer to all my problems. I went and did this crazy like detox retreat in India and called Panchakarma. I did, for those of you who've heard of the medical medium, I did kind of loads of his different diets. I did like this raw diet for a month. I did a 21-day water fast where I didn't eat for 3 weeks.
Wow.
I did, God, you name it. Like I really did give it a go. I've tried so many different things. And for me, just to be, I guess, completely transparent to those people who are listening, I'm still kind of in this in terms of like, I still have symptoms on a day-to-day basis. So I'm still kind of in this journey. But I guess what moved the needle for me was when I did start to focus more on mindset. So when I left my job in 2017, and I was like, I need to just focus on my health and improving my life. And I took a year out, trying to travel and stuff, and that didn't really help. And it was actually only when I decided that I wanted to work for myself and maybe just make myself more remote and actually have more control over my own time. Mm-hmm. That was what really kind of started to really help me, because then I was like, I didn't feel like I had to do certain things. I think when I was dragging myself to work every day, the thought of doing all these things for my health. And I remember having to take some time out to go and do stuff for my health. And I was always taking it for holiday because they were forcing for me to take it as holiday. And they were always making me feel really guilty. And it was just there just wasn't an understanding company that I was working in. And so that was what really started to move the needle for me when and at that point, I remember I think it was my mum maybe said to me, just, I hope you're not like just waiting for you to get better, for you to start living your life, or for you to start like being happy. And I remember that just really stuck out for me, because I just realized that, okay, I put my life on hold for like a long time. Now I'm actually gonna really start to like make something of it. And so I started to build a business. I started to and I really started to just focus on, I was still trying all these different, modalities and all these different things to get better, but really focusing on the things that, for me now, it's really focusing on the things that you should be doing that most people don't do: eating well, sleeping well, managing your stress. And also now I'm really trying to focus on like brain retraining and like limbic system dysfunction, because I've definitely got like a fight or flight issue with my nervous system, where it still thinks there's some, a tiger in the room, there's still something going on. And that's something I'm still working with. I've worked with, plant medicine and stuff like that. I think that's something I want to do more of. I did like an ayahuasca retreat last year.
I'm so jealous. I want to do one of them.
I really, yeah. I'm meant to do one later on this year in Costa Rica, but it's kind of trying to figure it out. But stuff like that, where I know for me, the key is the mind-body connection for me. I know the physical stuff matters as well. I do saunas, I do, being in Bali, when I was in Bali, saunas, ice baths, enemas, those kinds of things. They really help. But if your body is still in fight or flight the whole time, those things won't really matter as much. They won't have like a huge impact. And so for me, it's working on stuff that's getting myself in that state where I feel safe, my system feels safe, and it can, all of my natural bodily detox systems will do its job normally. Because essentially what I ended up getting diagnosed with, and I kind of missed this out the story, was up until about 2 years ago, I'd never really heard of mold as an issue. And I got tested, and my mold levels were through the roof. The flat I was living in had so much mold, and so that's been a big thing to find out as well. So I've worked a lot on using binders and different ways to like detoxify the body. So for me, it's really is a combination of working on that mind-body connection, but also with the physical stuff to go along with it. And I guess just to finalize that, for me, it's actually just improving as a person as well. And actually this whole process just makes you happier as a person. I think if I was, and I always ask this to people on my podcast, like, had this never happened to me, I was going down a very different route, where life would have been, I would have ultimately at age 50, 60, maybe even 40, my health would have gone bad anyway. I think I'm quite lucky that it happened early on in my life, and I still kind of have the knowledge and the enthusiasm to and openness to change like now, rather than having to do it later on in life. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's exactly how I feel about all of it. The nervous system stuff too. I honestly feel like that's the stuff I'm constantly harping on about now, because I think I did all that stuff too, like did all the, crazy protocols. Some of them helped in certain ways, some of them probably didn't, but you go to the extreme. I mean, like you said, you're that kind of person that goes to the extreme, right? So I think sometimes I'm the same, like type A, I'll go all in, or I'm not doing it at all. And I think like that can be to your advantage on a healing journey, because you're willing to do anything to get better. And you have to have that kind of like proactiveness. Obviously you're allowed your time to like soak and go through all the emotions and like grieve the fact that this is a shitty situation, but ultimately to like improve it, you do have to get out that victim mindset, like you said. And I did all that crazy stuff. Then I did all the foundations, the diet, the supplements, the lifestyle, the sleep hygiene, like that's all really important. But I definitely found that the missing piece is exactly what you've said, like this nervous system vigilance, this hypervigilant state that your body is now in because of what you've been through physically and emotionally, and it doesn't believe it's safe, and you physically can't heal from that place. And like learning that was so eye-opening to me, because it's like so many people, and I was this person, I think they're doing everything single thing right, like, you know, you've got all these different protocols and systems in place, but you just can't seem to get better, and you can't seem to move the needle. But once you like start working on your nervous system and bringing yourself back to that place of like calm and stability, your body actually can focus on digestion, focus on elimination, focus on like all those healing things. And so I think that's really powerful that you mentioned that. Yeah. And that is a long process. Like that's not something you can fix instantly. It's not like, right, I'm just going to take vitamin D now, that will sort that problem.
I think for me, it's like, it was believing it. Like I come across the mind body stuff like years ago, and it's not that I necessarily didn't think it was true. It's more that you think you get into this mindset, and because so much stuff hasn't worked, you're like, there's something different about me. There's something that they haven't figured out, and there's something that's, you know, that's not quite right about me, that means that, you know, that won't work for me.
Yeah.
And the good thing about doing this podcast is I realized that that's what everyone thinks. When I went, another thing that I've done, I went to a Joe Dispenza like an advanced retreat, and he said, because I was in his retreat thinking, this isn't working for me, and he literally about 5 minutes later said, I know there's people in there thinking, you know, this isn't working for me, you know, I'm not that kind of person. He was like, don't think you're that special, that you're the person, the one person in this room that this won't work for. And I think it's the same stuff with, you know, the mind body stuff. Like, yeah, it might not be natural for some people like me, but there's plenty of ways to heal, and there's plenty of ways to get there. And as long as you're prepared to keep going and you believe in it, then, you know, you will get there eventually. And that's, you know, that's what I believe for myself. Yeah.
And I think being around people who think that way as well is really helpful, isn't it? So I bet the energy at a Joe Dispenza retreat was absolutely insane.
Yeah, it is crazy. It is absolutely crazy. I would suggest, friend, I want to go back when I feel like I needed to do more work on, the stuff that I'm doing now. I probably want to go back in like another year. In the same year I did an ayahuasca retreat, and then I did the Joe Dispenza retreat like 3 months later. So it's pretty crazy time.
Tell us more about the ayahuasca experience.
God, what can I say?
How can you put it into words?
So it's like, it's one of the most terrifying yet like beautiful. I don't say that word like often.
I can't picture you saying that word often.
No, it felt weird when I said it. But it is like, and me, just things like that. Like I'm not someone who's very like, I don't find it easy to get in touch with my emotions that much. And I was, throughout one of the ceremonies, I was crying for like 3 hours, and it wasn't crying necessarily. It was half of it was crying with happiness as well, and it was like, and then I had so my first 2 ceremonies were like full of like love, and it was like I was connecting with the universe, and it was like all of these amazing, but it was still really scary, because it was like, I haven't done like loads of psychedelics before. I've done kind of maybe it recreationally, but not in like a ceremonial setting, and this was like, you know, next level shit. And then on the third ceremony, I was like, I figured this out, I'm ready to touch God again, this is amazing. And then, oh my God, it absolutely handed my ass to me. And it was the most terrifying night of my life. The really was. However, what ayahuasca does, and there wasn't one person who had a bad experience throughout I was there for 2 weeks, and 25 people that were ultimately came over those 2 weeks. Not one person had a negative experience, in the sense that what ayahuasca does, it might give you a horrible experience, but then it ties it up in a nice little bow and gives you this lesson at the end of it. And so I went through this horrible evening experience, and at the end of it, I had all of these realizations of why I had to go through that and what it meant, and it was relating to my health. And it was kind of crazy. Before each ceremony, you have like an intention of what you want to work on, and each time it played to that intention. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm excited to go and do it again, but I just got this, I know that it's what I need to do.
Yeah, and they kind of say that, don't they? It's like you have to be kind of called to do it, which again probably sounds a bit woo, but I think once you're on the healing path and you do start getting to know your body better, it's like you intuitively feel that something might be right for you to do next. And I definitely feel like while I'm in Mexico, it's probably a good time to try it. So did you do it in Mexico?
Well, yeah, I did. I was going to say I went to. So when are you there till October?
I think so. Yeah.
When do they? No, I think the next one. Oh, hang on. I don't know. I'll give you the email. They're called Arcana International, and they do some really nice place. About 3 or 4 hours drive from Cancun, and it was just in this like hacienda in the middle of nowhere, and it was just it was like it was an amazing place. I didn't want to say beautiful again. It really was an amazing place. So I would suggest anyone who goes and does it, like, to do it based on a recommendation and really do your research, because the shamans, they play so much of a massive role. Before I went, people said that to me and I was just like, yeah, okay, yeah, right. But honestly, they do. They it sounds mental, but they control your emotions and your experience and the way you feel with their singing, because they like chant and sing. And it's fucking freaky. Sorry.
I'll take the explicit box on this episode.
Yeah, please do. If you're offended, don't listen to this one.
So having like been through everything you have and learned everything you've learned, what would you say, how is life different for you now, I guess? And also, what would you say have been the biggest like needle movers for you? I know you believe, like I do, that it's bio-individuality. Everybody's different. Everyone's got a different combination of factors going on for them. But like someone listening that's like, I just feel really stuck with this. Like, what would you suggest that's helped you?
So first of all, my life's different in every way. I haven't got the physical, I'm not physically where I want to be. However, I know that when I get there, I'm going to actually push right through that, and I'm going to get to a level that I never would have gotten to previously. And so my goal now is never to get what I lost. It's to get to a whole different level and be someone I'm in my mid-30s now, and to be someone in their mid-30s who's, out running and out lifting and whatever, a guy in their mid-20s. And so, that's the goal there. And in terms of like, my life is just so different. I've just been in Bali for 6 months. I'm now in Ibiza at the moment, but I'm working at the same time and I'm running my own business. I previously never would have done that. I was driven by success and money, and I'm still driven by those things to an extent, but it's very much a combination of things. Like, I want to have those things, but not to a detriment of my own health and my own happiness. I don't want to swap my time for money anymore. And I was on the path to, earning a lot of money and being successful. But I would have been still be in London. I'd have probably got, I actually know the job I would have got next, and I'd have been earning loads of money. It would have been amazing for like a couple of years. But I know I'd be desperately unhappy now and feel like this emptiness. And so I've ended it. And what this has meant to, I've then gone down this kind of spiritual path, which you can probably tell listening to me, I don't sound like the most spiritual of people, but I'm now open to doing anything. If you said to me, I've got this really like weird thing, you probably wouldn't be into it. I'll be like, I'll be into it. You don't even need to start with that. I'll do it. I'll try it. And so I like that about me, whereas before I wouldn't have been like that at all. And I think that's kind of a quality that I'm really happy that I've got now. And in terms of, for me, what I'd suggest to people is, I think, first of all, I have had people on my podcast who did get better pretty quickly, and it was maybe the obvious thing, and they did do a certain treatment and it worked straight away. So obviously try the obvious things first. Don't go and do all of these brain retraining stuff immediately. Like, if you can just get a shortcut and do, some people avoid gluten and they get better. So, do that if you can, because that's a lot easier. However, you just be open-minded. I think, so doing the podcast, for now 100 episodes, I can see so many consistencies and why people have got better. And it's through people. One, there's just ultimately an unwavering belief that they would get there and that they would get better, and that's important. Some people didn't have it immediately, but they cultivate it over time. And two is an acknowledgement that this isn't just a physical thing, that there is a mind. There's just such a connection. Always is, and if you deny that, you're going to make this a far longer journey for yourself. And the videos that I post on YouTube, I can always tell the people that are probably closest to getting better and the people that are far away from them. And that's not, painting them in a negative light, but it's always the people that are looking at things negatively and you can see people in the Facebook groups, they're like, almost when people recover, they're like, someone actually, when I started recording this, I had a notification on an episode I posted like 2 years ago, and it said in capital letters, scam. it's just like, and I just felt sorry for that person, because they're there thinking everyone's out to get me, the world's out to get me, I'm a victim, this is, and I get it. And I was in that place. I wasn't necessarily writing scam on people's YouTube videos, but still I was in a place where I was like, everyone else was the problem, and I couldn't solve it myself. So so really, really look at that. And I guess tying into that is just really try not to see yourself as the victim, and really try to take ownership over your own recovery. And for a long time, particularly the ownership, I think I stopped seeing myself as a victim a while ago, but I was still kind of hoping that someone might knock on my door and just say, here's the pill, you'll be better. But I know that I need to do the work, and it's on me. And I did an episode at some point, and I said it was an update on my own health, and I wasn't feeling that great, but I was like, do you know what, it feels good, because I know it's because I haven't been doing the things that I need to do. Yeah, sorry. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, thank you. I'm like that. You're probably not used to being the one talking either. You're like, you've got the podcast ahead on, and you're like, are they rambling? Am I rambling?
I ramble too much. And for those who are watching on YouTube, before we started recording, Sarah said that my fan was too loud, so I was just like, had to turn it off. So it's like I'm now sweltering.
Well, you can't really complain being an IB-fer.
No, I'm joking. The aircon is on, but yeah, I'm just sweating too much. But yeah, apologies for rambling.
No, you're not. It's all good stuff. I've even forgotten what I was going to ask next now. You throw me off. So what would be really helpful as well is if you could recommend a resource or like a couple of resources that would help people on this journey. So I know, like you mentioned, Joe Dispenza, so I just want to back that. Like, his books are incredible, and obviously if you could go to a live event, that'd be even better. But for anyone that doesn't know, like, Joe Dispenza managed to overcome a lot of really serious physical problems from like a big injury. I don't know in as much detail as you, but through a lot of this like mind body work and like the biology of belief and epigenetics, which is all based in science, and like managed to recover when I think they said he wouldn't ever be able to walk again, didn't they? And now he's like this speaker, leader, all around the world.
Yeah, he had a car. He got knocked off a bike by like a 16-wheeler truck or something like that. But he's like, they told him he was going to have fuse his spine together. And even then, when they did that, there was like a 75% chance he'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And within 3 months of him doing the work that he tells everyone to do now, he was like running again, and he was fine. He was completely healed. And the reason why he is so good is because he mixes the kind of, I guess, the spirituality stuff with pure science. You can't deny it. He actually explains it, because it's all about the quantum field, quantum physics. And so I would suggest anyone, if you don't read books, I do read books, but more like in terms of actually physically reading. I read them at night to go to sleep, but that's more like fiction stuff. When I want to listen to stuff like this, I listen to Audible. And for someone who's like saying, oh, I can't read, just get Audible because it's brilliant. But the books that I would suggest to read, first of all, read Placebo, which is amazing, and that is all about mind body. It's amazing, so please start with that. And then the next one is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And then if you're not bored of that, if you're not bored by that point, Becoming Supernatural is also awesome, but definitely begin with Placebo. But yeah, in terms of other things, yeah, it's really difficult, right? I know spending money is like, I'm trying to think of like giving stuff people that's like not that expensive, because I know that I still am like shiny object syndrome, where I hear something and I go and do it, mm-hmm. And so I don't want, and different, as you said, different things work for different people. I'm currently doing a program called Primal Trust with a woman called Dr. Kat King, and reason why I like her, she brings in a lot of the learnings from someone like Joe Dispenza and from all of these different people, and she references them all as well. She doesn't try to just pass it off as her own thing, which I really appreciate. And what she professes is stop trying to fix yourself, this fix it mentality of trying to get better, seeing yourself as broken, all of these kinds of things. And that only kind of, it's a vicious cycle, because then it just keeps, every time you try and fix yourself, you're actually playing into that mindset, that identity that you're broken. And she really, really champions like living your life like now and not waiting for it to get going. And so I'd probably say her as well. And I don't think her program is like a monthly cost, so it's not like you can do it for a month. I think it's like $90 and then see how that is. But yeah.
And does she incorporate the brain retraining stuff that you mentioned?
Yes. Yeah. She does. I'm only like halfway through it at the moment. So yeah. And she's like she's a very genuine person. So I've had loads of people on the podcast, you included, who offer great programs. So it's like really difficult for me to like, I think I could only recommend stuff that I'm actually kind of doing. So I'm just trying to think of good books, because there's so many good ones out there, but anything, just try and do anything on the mind body connection is useful, these kind of things. But those would be my recommendations.
Awesome, thank you. So just one more question I always ask my guests: what does Mojo mean to you?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's that. I think it's kind of like that feeling where it's a bit like flow state, right? Where you're kind of feeling like you're doing things effortlessly, where just one of those days where everything just falls into place and that everything's just going your way. I think that's what it is for me.
Yeah, a few people have mentioned flow, and I think that's a really good one. And some people have said like, stop focusing on balance and more focus on flow, because balance is a bit of a like bullshitty word sometimes, isn't it? It's like, can anyone really get balance? But like, if you can try and create more flow, then that definitely enables life to be more enjoyable, which is really the goal.
No, definitely. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Mojo is a cool word though, so I should use that one.
Thank you. I have had a couple of people be like, are you talking about like sexual mojo? Is this all about sex, your podcast? I'm like, no.
I was going to say, but I've already been a bit inappropriate. So
I do need to get someone on that topic, actually.
Okay. Yeah, definitely not me on that topic. So
thank you so much for today. Where can our listeners find you?
Just The Chronic Comeback is the podcast that I run. On Instagram, The Chronic Comeback, or YouTube, The Chronic Comeback, Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Bye.